Can artificial intelligence help you make your living trust? A lot of people are starting to wonder if they can use ChatGPT or another AI tool to draft their own trust and skip hiring an attorney or even using these online softwares like Law Depot or LegalZoom. But is using ChatGPT really a safe idea, or could it end up putting your family's assets at risk? In this video, I'm going to walk you through a few things you need to know about using AI for drafting your estate plan, such as your living trust. And so I'm going to walk you through an example and show you what I would do if I were using ChatGPT to make my own living trust. And by the way, my name is Edmund. I'm a living trust attorney. I've helped over 1,000 clients to protect their assets and their family. And I'm excited to share my tips and tricks with you today. Before we start, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss new videos with very practical estate planning tips. And by the way, please don't call our office for free advice. We don't give free information. We don't give free advice. We don't answer questions. So please don't call us unless you really want to hire us to help you with your estate plan. So here's what you're going to learn today. Number one, you're going to learn the exact AI prompt that I used to get a step-by-step roadmap for creating a living trust. And I'm going to show you another AI prompt that can help you brainstorm the important decisions you'll probably never even think about, questions that you should be asking yourself, your estate planning attorney, when you're putting together your estate plan. And so I'm going to show you how to use Chat GPT to help you brainstorm your estate planning decisions. I'm also going to show you a real example of the answer that AI gave me when it comes to using these prompts, so you know exactly what to expect and how to tweak it in order to make it better. I'm also going to show you a sample living trust that ChatGPT helped me draft based on my instructions, so you can see just how detailed these documents are and whether or not you want to use ChatGPT to help yourself set up your own living trust. And by the way, I have a free class. It's at www.freetrustclass.com. I walk you through the whole living trust uh, drafting process, design process, so you know what to expect, whether you're doing it yourself, whether you're hiring an attorney to do it for you. It's a really great class. It's about an hour and a half long, but it's worth it because I give a lot of examples that you should know about in order to make sure that you avoid common mistakes that I see when people make their own living trust. So if you want to learn how to make your trust with confidence, check out my free trust class at freetrustclass.com. So the first thing I want to share with you today is I use an AI prompt to help make estate planning decisions. So you might have a bunch of questions about estate planning, about what to put in your living trust. And so there's going to be a lot of things that you just wouldn't know um, to ask, right? There's questions that are very specific to drafting a living trust thoughtfully and completely, that if you don't ask these questions, your living trust will not be complete. And so I asked ChatGPT to give me those questions. And so this is the prompt that I asked it to use. So for those of you who don't know, ChatGPT is an AI that you can use to answer questions for you. However, you need to train the AI. You need to let the AI know what kind of answers you expect. And so you can't just say, hey, AI, just help me draft my living trust. There's certain prompts that you have to give it in order to make sure that it's going to create a living trust that's based on your intentions. And so this is the prompt that I put in ChatGPT to start asking it questions, because the first step to every living trust is to design it, right? Just like how if you're building a home, you don't just go ahead and build a home. First, you have to architect it. You got to design the home. And so that's the first step that we usually do with our clients. We help them design and architect their estate plan. So I'm trying to figure out a way if ChatGPT can help me architect and design and think through some important decisions that you and other parents and homeowners and business owners might be thinking about in order to make your own living trust. And so this is the prompt that I use. Act like an estate planning attorney. Ask me thoughtful questions to help me make decisions for creating my living trust. Cover topics like who I want as my trustee or backup trustee, how I can divide my assets to my beneficiaries, whether I want protections for my children, like age-based distributions, which is when would you like your children to inherit? You probably don't want them to inherit everything when they're young, so you can stagger it. You can say you can get this percentage at this age, that percentage at that age. How I want to handle my home, who gets the home, who gets to manage it, what should happen if my spouse remarries, who should care for minor children, and what to do if one of my beneficiaries passes before me. So adding contingent beneficiaries are also important. Keep asking me follow-up questions until I have thought through all the major decisions. Ask me more relevant questions to make the most complete living trust based on my situation. So this is what you should be asking ChatGPT to start with. You want to prompt them. You want to give it specific instructions. And so after I did that, this is what ChatGPT gave me. So this is basically the prompt answers. So for example, the first thing they asked me is, who do you want to manage your trust if you become incapacitated or after you pass away? Do you have a reliable backup trustee in case your first choice can't serve? So in every single trust, a trust is designed to make sure that when you die, all your assets will be divided according to your wish, right? And so you need to have a successor trustee. The successor trustee will step in when you pass away and divide the assets, follow your instructions, and make sure that your wishes are honored. So choosing trustees are your most important decisions that you have to make. And so you can choose a first trustee, a contingent trustee, just in case the first one's not here. And so when you're thinking about trustees, keep asking the ChatGPT questions to go deeper into this topic of trustees. I've made a couple videos about how to select the right trustee, and so if you want to go back to my channel, I give you some tips and tricks there. Second is beneficiaries, right? You've got your trustee set up. Now you have to set up your beneficiaries. Who's going to receive your assets? For example, your spouse, your children, grandchildren, your loved ones. Should each person receive an equal share, or would you like to divide these things differently? Right, these are questions that you have to brainstorm. And so you can ask ChatGPT to ask you more questions about this topic, and they'll be able to help you come up with a more elaborate plan. Number 3, children's protections. If your children are still young, do you want them to receive everything outright when they're 18? Or would you prefer that they receive funds in stages? For example, some of it at 25, some of it at 30, and everything else at 35. So these are decisions that you have to make. When we sit down with our clients, especially clients with younger kids, whether they're in elementary school, high school, or even in their early 20s, a lot of them don't feel like the kids are ready to step in and manage their own inheritance until maybe they're 30. And so you want to make sure that you set up a trust correctly where the assets that you leave to your children, it's not going to be a curse, because it could be a curse if they inherit it too early, right? The Bible says that if someone inherits too early, they're just going to squander it because they're not mature. So you want to make sure that you've got the right trustee to manage their inheritance and be specific about when the trustee should be releasing assets to them to make their own decisions. Number 4, your home. What's going to happen to your home? Should your home be kept in the family, sold, and the money divided among your beneficiaries? Do you want someone specific to have the right to live in it first for a number of years before it's sold and divided? The home is the most contested asset in a living trust for a typical family. Some kids, they just want to sell and divide the money. Some of them want to keep it, but don't have the funds to buy out the others. And so it causes a lot of family drama. So the home is something that my clients and I, we talk a lot about during the living trust design process. And so you should put some thought into how your house is to be divided, especially if you have multiple children or multiple beneficiaries. So you want to be very clear about that when you set up your living trust. Spousal remarriage, if your spouse remarries after you die, do you want all the assets to remain available to your surviving spouse, or do you want to safeguard some of that to make sure your children still inherit? So, a lot of times in a typical trust, it says that when I die, I want all the assets to go to my surviving spouse. They have total control, which is great for most cases because you don't want the surviving spouse to have to deal with trust administration and tax filings. And so a lot of times you just want everything to go to surviving spouse. However, there are some situations where you feel like, okay, what if surviving spouse remarries? What's going to happen to the kids? And would they be allowed to disinherit the kids and give it to their new spouse or even to someone else? So if you're concerned about those things, you should talk it over with ChatGPT. But in these situations, I would highly recommend you work with an attorney because I'm going to show you in a moment what ChatGPT wrote for me, and it's not good when it comes to this topic. And so there's some things where if you have certain family dynamics, if you have certain legal issues that you want resolved, you shouldn't rely on ChatGPT. There's still a lot of limitations when it comes to AI, especially in the legal arena. And so you want to make sure that for these types of matters, if you're concerned about these questions, you should definitely hire an attorney so they can walk you through it and prepare a plan that's going to rectify these issues. Number 6, guardianship. If you have a minor children, who should care for them if something happened to you? Do you have a backup guardian if your first choice can't serve? So this is a guardianship question that ChatGPT asked me, and I'm going to show you later why this question is wrong. Okay, so hold on to this question. I'm going to show you why it's wrong. Number 7, contingencies. If one of your beneficiaries pass away before you, should their share go to their children or be divided among your other beneficiaries? So you always need backup beneficiaries. We don't want a situation where there's no beneficiaries, because if that's the case, this trust will end up in probate, which is the last place that you want it. So these are this is the prompt that ChatGPT came up with. Let me refresh my memory. Let me see. There's more. Nope. So this is the prompt. Okay. So you can use ChatGPT to help you make decisions, help you and ask questions. Because as attorneys, when we meet with clients, the reason why clients pay us and hire us and use us and seek our help is because we can ask the right questions. So the question is, can ChatGPT ask you the right questions? Maybe if you keep asking them. However, what I've seen with these prompts is there are certain things where ChatGPT is just not going to know because they're not going to know what to ask you. And so there are situations where you should be using an attorney. And there are situations where you could risk just using ChatGPT or doing a living trust yourself using one of those online softwares like LegalZoom or Law Depot. But this is the prompt that we received when I put in the request for ChatGPT. It's a good start. This list is a very good start, but there's so much more involved when it comes to living trusts that ChatGPT just doesn't ask. And so just be careful when you're using ChatGPT, but this is a really good start, and it should encourage you to get something done. Right? These questions, if you don't know the answer to these questions, or if you feel like, oh man, if I died right now, none of my wishes would be honored because there's no plan, and all my assets wouldn't have been probate, and that's not going to be good for my kids. So these questions should prompt you to understand why it's so important to set up a living trust before you pass away. And so another prompt that I asked ChatGPT was to give me step-by-step instructions on how to make a living trust. So I have a free trust class, like I mentioned earlier. It's called www.freetrustclass.com. The link is on the bottom of this video, and I walk people through step-by-step what they need to do to make their living trust correctly. And so if you want to if you're curious, I highly recommend that you watch that class, because what I found is a lot of people, when they make their own living trust, they do it, but they don't do everything that's needed. They probably do 80%. But that extra 20% that's missing, that's the difference between probate or no probate. That's the difference between the right people receiving your assets versus the wrong people receiving it. And that's the difference between not having to pay unnecessary attorney's fees versus paying a bunch of attorney's fees to fix your mistakes. And so you have to make sure you have a step-by-step action plan and make sure that you get everything done. So, for example, making a trust is like flying a plane, kind of. Uh, a pilot has a checklist, right? Before they take off, they have a checklist they have to check through every single time. And so that's what we do here at our law firm. We have a checklist. So every single client, we're going to go through that same checklist to make sure everything is done. If we miss a step, then that means that the trust might not work. So you also need a checklist to make a living trust. So I put in this prompt for ChatGPT to get me a checklist. So act as my step-by-step guide for setting up a living trust. Walk me through the process in plain English. Start with deciding whether a living trust is right for me, then explain how to gather my assets and information, how to choose trustees and beneficiaries, what type of provisions are included, and how the trust document is drafted. After that, explain the funding process, like transferring my home, bank accounts, and other assets into the trust, and with what to do once the trust is signed, such as keeping it safe, reviewing it regularly, present each step clearly and in order like a checklist. So, by the way, I want to share a secret with you. This prompt and the other prompt that I put together, these prompts were created by ChatGPT. So you can actually ask ChatGPT to show you how to ask them questions, which is really cool. So I just wanted to, go through ChatGPT and just share with you how I would do it and see how effective ChatGPT is. So this is what ChatGPT wrote. I did not write this. And so I gave ChatGPT this prompt, and this is what it gave me. So here's the step-by-step roadmap for creating your own living trust, according to ChatGPT. Number one, decide if a living trust is right for you. So it explains a living trust helps you avoid probate, keep your affairs private, and control how and when your assets are distributed. It's especially helpful if you own real estate or have children. So if that applies to you, if you have kids, if you own real estate, if you want to make sure you avoid probate, keep affairs private when you pass away, control how and when your assets are distributed, then you might want to set up a living trust. So now you're like, okay, I want to set up a living trust. So what do I do? Step two would be gather your information. Make a list of all your assets, your homes, bank accounts, retirement accounts, investment accounts, and personal property. Write them down, what the values are and how each asset is to be titled. And so you can do that with ChatGPT. I have a course that you can enroll in where I give you a complete step-by-step checklist and a worksheet where you can gather all the important information that you need in order to set up your living trust. So if you're interested in that, I would first encourage you to check out my free trust class on the bottom of this video, www.freetrustclass.com, and I can share more about that course with you. Step number three is choose your trustee and successor trustee. So we went through this earlier. You'll manage the trust while you're alive. So you're the trustee, you're the initial trustee, and then you're going to decide who will step in after you, your spouse, your adult children, your trusted friend, or even a professional trustee. So you'll choose your trustee. And this is very important, okay? I'm going to link a video up here that's going to show you how to pick a trustee. So check out that video later in this. It should be in the corner, the top right corner right now. And so I'll have my team put it up there. If not, leave a comment below and my team will give you that link. Number four, choose your beneficiaries. Decide who gets what and how. You can keep it simple, everything to your spouse, then your kids equally, or more detailed, certain percentages, gifts, specific properties, stage distributions by age, etc. So this is actually really great tips from ChatGPT. And it continues. Next, you draft a document, right? This is the legal paperwork that spells out your wishes. An attorney normally prepares this, but AI can help you brainstorm what provisions to include, like protections for children, remarriage issues, or charitable gifts. So you draft your trust. Later on this video, I'm going to show you a trust document that ChatGPT drafted for me. And then step number six Sign and notarize the trust. A trust isn't valid until it's signed. Most states also require notarization. Uh, ChatGPT probably knows this, but didn't include it. In Florida, the trust also needs to be witnessed. So pay attention to the signing requirements of your trust. It might not be valid if you don't sign it correctly. Number 7, fund the trust. Transfer ownership of your assets into the trust. So funding, it's just a fancy word for transfer. You want to transfer assets into the trust, make the trust the owner of your house, your bank accounts. You can also add beneficiaries if you don't want to put assets in the trust, like life insurance, retirement accounts. And so funding the trust is to make sure that the trust works. Step 8, store your trust safely somewhere. Keep the original trust in a safe but accessible place. Tell your successor trustee where it is. Oh, these are really great tips. This is exactly what I tell my clients when they after they sign their living trust. Step 9, review regularly. Okay, life changes, marriage, divorce, new children, buying property. So review your trust every few years to keep it up to date. That's really important as well. Your trust could be outdated after 3 years, depending on your family situation. So you want to make sure that you update it periodically. Every few years is good. At least talk to your attorney again. That's why at our firm, we give our clients one free annual review. Every year they can schedule a meeting with me and to go through their estate plan, any questions they have, any changes. And so that's really important that you go through your estate plan every single year. So that's the prompt, step by step. This is a good start. Okay, so designing your plan, gathering information, choosing trustees, beneficiaries, drafting the document, signing it correctly, storing it somewhere safe, funding it, and regularly reviewing it. These are really good steps. A lot of people miss step number 7, fund the trust. They just have the document and never fund the trust. The trust will not work without it. Sign and notarize the trust. A lot of people sign it wrong. Sometimes people who do it themselves, they contact me because now they want to hire an attorney to update and make sure everything is right. When I look at their trust, it's not signed. So you want to make sure that you sign everything correctly. And so this is a good list. One thing that I would add here would be to set up additional estate planning documents that are necessary. When you have a trust, you have to set up a pour over will to work alongside that trust. So I would do a pour over will and the other estate planning documents like healthcare directives and power of attorneys. Also, one very important step here that I would highlight is in step 7, it says record a new deed, transferring your home into the trust. A lot of people miss this too. They don't have a new deed that transfers the home into the trust. They didn't even know they had to do that. When they die, it's under their name, and it ends up in probate. So make sure you understand each step. And if you want more steps, check out my free trust class at freetrustclass.com. I walk you through that as well. All right, so now I want to show you something. I want to show you, oops, not here. I want to show you this one, this document. Can you draft a revocable living trust? This is what I asked ChatGPT. If so, what information do you need from me? So now that I gave it all the prompts, I want them to draft the trust. And so you want to give ChatGPT as much information as you can. This is what ChatGPT wanted to know. So I went through these, all of these right here. They wanted to know all of these things. And so I gave them all this information. And this is what it gave me in return. So I'm pretending to be John Doe and Jane Doe, who's married, who lives in California. They have 2 kids. Let me see what I named them. Steve Doe and Sarah Doe. And they want to give everything to them equally, 50-50. They also want to give $5,000 to their niece, Amber Lee. And they would like Steve Doe to be the successor. And if he can't do it, it'll be their daughter, Sarah Doe. And so this structure is a typical structure for a living trust. Married couple has kids. They want to give everything equally to them. And so this is what a typical trust would deal with, right? So ChatGPT wrote this trust for me. And I told them to write it according to California law. You should definitely write your trust according to your state's laws. And so ChatGPT attempted to write a California trust for me. So this is how it looks like. Also, a place for us to sign. And then Schedule A is really important. It's a list of all the assets that you're putting into the trust. So you want to list those details here. So what I want to do is I want to go through this, and I'm gonna share with you what's good about it and what's bad about it. First of all, um, it's good in the sense that it hits on the common things in a trust successor trustees, as well as beneficiaries, who gets what, and it does give you a space to sign and notarize. And so, uh, big picture, it does contain a lot of the important things that is needed in a typical revocable trust. Okay. So, generally speaking, it touches on most things. However, when you look through the details, you'll know how incomplete it is and how ambiguous it is. And when it comes to legal documents, you have to be clear in everything that you write, because if things are not clear, what's going to happen is it's going to lead to litigation. It's going to lead to the trustee having to go to court and asking the judge to explain what this means. And so that's could be litigated if beneficiaries have different interpretations of what the clause means. And so you need a trust that is clearly written and has all the details necessary to administer the trust in a way where it's clear that it doesn't require probate, the probate court having to decide what a particular sentence or word means. And so, first of all, this trust, it's essentially only 2 pages long with signatures on the third page. Uh, trusts, I've seen trusts 2 pages, 3 pages long, and that's when someone does it themselves. A trust should not be this short. It doesn't give enough information for the trustee to act and to serve and to distribute. And so I'm not going to go through what's missing here per se, because it's going to take me forever. And so I just wanted to point out some major things that I've seen that someone who hasn't drafted a living trust before might not see. Okay, so let's go through that. Okay, so the first section just talks about how John Doe and Jane Doe are setting up their trust and they want to move some assets into the trust. Article 2 talks about how it's revocable and it can be amended, which is really, really good. And so it really allows the surviving both spouses to amend the trust. And this particular trust allows the surviving spouse to amend. So a lot of times you want the surviving spouse to amend the trust to account for changes in your family. For example, if one of your kids just disowns you and stops talking to you, the question is, do you want to leave something to them? Or do you want to leave it to the child who loves you more? Or do you want to give more to them, right? Right now, if they're young, you might want to give it to them 50-50. But in the future, if one of them just disowns you and doesn't want to talk to you, doesn't want to care for you, do you want to give it to them 50-50? And so you might want to allow the surviving spouse to amend the trust when when one of you dies. Some of our other clients, they don't want that. They don't want the surviving spouse to amend. And so if you don't want the spouse to amend, you have to address that in your trust. And I don't think that's something that ChatGPT can address and draft in a competent way. So if there's anything complicated like that, you should definitely work with an attorney. All right, the third section is all about the trustees. Who's going to serve as trustee? While the husband and wife are alive, they're the trustees. If one of them dies, survivor's the trustee. So that's usually the case. If you want a situation where when one of you dies, surviving spouse has to serve as trustee with one of your children, you should make that clear. You might want to do that if you're older now and you feel like if one of you died, the surviving spouse might be swindled to give everything away. If that's the case, you might want to have a co-trustee so the kids can at least look after the surviving spouse and be somewhat involved. The kids can't stop the surviving spouse from amending the trust or revoking it if the surviving spouse is allowed to do that in the trust. But it does give them a little bit of say when it comes to being the co-trustee. And then it says here, when both of them dies, Steve Doe serves as successor, and if he dies, then it goes to Sarah. One thing that this trust is missing is identifying Steve and Sarah as the beneficiaries. I'm sorry, as the children. So usually we want to highlight who the kids are. And one thing that we do at our firm is we let everyone know that there's no other children. If there are children that say, hey, I'm your child, in the trust, we make it clear that that child is to be disinherited. If you're silent on this issue, that one child that comes out of nowhere that says, I'm your child, could be entitled to some of the assets. And so you want to make sure that you're mindful of these things. I know that this is probably something that you never thought about, but I don't blame you. But it does happen sometimes. Even if it's someone who's not your child, for sure, but they just want to make that claim. So then the trustee gives them something to stop the lawsuit. You want to have these provisions in there to make sure that they're not going to be allowed to even fight. There's no legal claim to it. And so those are some of the things that I would suggest that you have in your trust. So let me see here. This trust doesn't really have, it doesn't really list what powers the trustee has. And it just says the trustee has broad powers to manage the assets, distribute, otherwise handle trust property without the need for court approval. That's okay, but a lot of times financial institutions or some other third party, for the trustee to act, it has to be very clear that they have specific powers. So, for example, the power to manage bank accounts. It doesn't say that here. It's just very general. Some banks are very picky about that, and this isn't reference to the probate code that lists the powers of the trustee. So some trusts don't list out specific powers that the trustee has. It just says, hey, just look at the probate code, and whatever the probate code lists in terms of what powers the trustee has that power to do those things. But this doesn't have it. So as you can see, these little things that I'm pointing out to you, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's going to be a big deal when there's going to be issues like that in the future. So you want to make sure that ChatGPT or whoever's drafting your living trust is going to address those issues. And then there's this section right here that talks about specific distributions. So $5,000 goes to their niece, Amber, which is great, right? If you want Amber to receive. But the question is, what happens when she dies? Or what happens if she dies before the both of you? Who gets that 5,000? It's silent here. So that might be an issue. If she did die, and now who's going to get the 5,000? Does it go to the remaining beneficiaries? Does it go to her descendants? So those things you want to make sure that you write very clearly in a legal document like this. And then after the debts, taxes, and expenses are paid, the remainder beneficiary would go to our children, Sarah and Steve, in equal shares, outright, and free of trust. So if you want your kids to have everything outright, they can have it outright. For kids who are minors, you might not want this. You want them to maybe have a little bit when they're 18, 22, 25, and everything when they're 30. So you have to spell those things out when you have minor children, or if you have children who you feel like are going to squander their inheritance, how do we make sure that Steve is not going to take all the money, sell everything, and then gamble things away? If you've got a gambler, if you got a child addicted to drugs, you want to make sure that you allow the trustee to maintain control, potentially for the rest of that child's life, and be able to provide for them only for their needs, their education, their health care, to maintain their center of living. And so those details need to be here, unless you just want your kids to have everything outright, right? And if either child predeceases us, so if either child passes away before us, that child's share will be distributed to his or her living descendants per stirpe. So this trust says that if Steve dies, for example, then his inheritance will go to his kids. Okay. Now, this is all great and all, but what happens if Steve does not have kids and he dies? It doesn't say your other child gets it, Sarah, right? So little gaps like these, we don't want. We always want to make sure that we're very clear. If one of your kids dies, it goes to their kids. And then if they have no kids, then it goes to your other child. This doesn't have that. And then what happens if all four of you are in an accident, airplane accident? Y'all died at the same time, no other descendants. Who's going to receive? There's nothing like that here. And so that's missing, and that could be an issue if that situation arises. And so a living trust should address very common issues that could happen. And if it's not there, then it can mean probate, and it can mean your assets going to the wrong people. Another thing that I don't see here, let me see. Another thing that I don't see here is what happens to the assets when one of you dies. When one of the spouses dies, everything goes to surviving spouse, right? But it doesn't talk about that. And so that's something that needs to be addressed. If your kids are under 21, or let's say they're minors, then there's the appointment of Steve Doe as a guardian for their minor child, Sarah. So let's say Sarah is your minor child, under 18. If she's under 18 when you both pass, you will want Steve to be the guardian of her, which is great. But usually we don't put this in a living trust. We put this in a will, a pour over will. And so this is the wrong place to put it. So, this is another example where you have to be very careful. You might write something in a trust that belongs in a will, that belongs in a healthcare directive, that belongs in a power of attorney. So you're not going to know that, right? Because you don't have the knowledge, and I don't blame you. If I didn't do estate planning, I wouldn't know these things. So these are some other things to catch. Remarriage protection. This is something that our clients love to talk about. If one spouse remarries, the trustee shall take reasonable measures to protect the children's inheritance from diversion to a new spouse. The surviving trustor shall retain the right to use and enjoy the trust property during his lifetime, but no amendment or distribution shall eliminate or reduce the shares of Steve and Sarah. Okay, so this is terrible. I just want to be honest. This is a terrible provision. First of all, this provision is trying to say, hey, what happens if surviving spouse remarries? How do we protect the kids' inheritance? And they do a terrible job in these 3 or 2 sentences. You can't do it in 2 sentences. First of all, it says that the trustee shall take reasonable measures to protect the children's inheritance. The trustee is the surviving spouse. And so the surviving spouse is going to do it, right? What if they get influenced by their new spouse? So that's not a viable option. There should be a third-party trustee doing this. And this part is really vague. The surviving spouse will retain the right to use the trust properties during their lifetimes. So that means the surviving spouse can take some of these assets away to enjoy and use, but they can't amend the beneficiaries, which is fine. But they also can't, but no distribution shall eliminate or reduce the shares of Steve and Sarah. So that means that, to me, it kind of means the surviving spouse can't take distributions out. That's going to reduce what's going to go to Steve and Sarah. So what's going to go to Steve and Sarah is all the remaining assets, right? So this kind of means that surviving spouse can't take anything out, because it's going to reduce what's going to be given to Steve and Sarah. Does that make sense? So there's these little things like these where it's so unclear that it's going to create a lot of issues, and it's definitely going to require a probate judge to clarify what all this means. Also, this dynasty trust provision right here, assets will be held continuously for the benefits of our beneficiaries forever and ever. That's what a dynasty trust is for. It's to hold everything forever and ever. You don't want that. You don't want that. First of all, California can't. California trusts must be terminated after a number of years. It cannot last forever. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot missing, but I just want to point out one other thing: the signing. The notary acknowledgement is incorrect. This is not consistent with California law, and so even though I asked ChatGPT to give me a California trust, it did not give me a California acknowledgement. So if you sign this, you notarize this, a notary might not even notarize this. It might give you another acknowledgement, which is fine. But these are little things that you need to pay attention to make sure that you're doing everything correctly. So with all that being said, I would highly recommend that you do not use ChatGPT to draft it, but to design it and to help ask wonderful questions that you can use to maybe do it yourself with LegalZoom or Law Depot, or to hire an attorney to help you. If you want to learn more details about living trust process, check out my free trust class at freetrustclass.com, and that should really help you. So before I leave, I want to share this scripture with you from John 14:6. I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. This is Jesus speaking. You know, as we've seen today, AI can be a really helpful tool. It can answer your questions, guide you to decisions, and even give you step-by-step instructions for your living trust. But no matter how advanced technology gets, there's only one place we can find what I like to say the ultimate answer, right? What's going to happen when we die? What's the purpose of life? You know, AI might help you prepare for your family's future, but only Jesus Christ can prepare you for eternity. What happens after you die? So as you're thinking about your estate plan, what happens when you die, what happens to your assets, I encourage you to also think about your eternal plan and to put your trust in Jesus Christ. Because the Bible says that our biggest problem isn't how to divide our assets. It's how we can be made right with the holy God. We're all sinners. We've broken God's laws. The biggest law we've broken is not treating God as our God. We've rejected him. We try to do life our way. And God says, no, come to me. I want to be your father. I want you to do life with me. I've given you life. And this is how you can have life now and beyond. And so we've rejected that at some point of our lives, right? And so we deserve to go to hell because we're criminals. But the good news is Jesus Christ, the Son of God, came into this world, lived the perfect life we could never live, died on the cross for our sins, and then he rose again after the third day so that whoever trusts in him will not perish but have eternal life. John 3:16. So yes, AI is really wise. Plan your trust correctly, right? And carefully. Provide for your children. That's what the Bible says. We have to provide for our children. But don't stop there. Make sure you have an eternal plan. Put your faith in Jesus Christ. He is truly the way, the truth, and the life. No one can go to the Father, God, heaven, without Jesus. And that's the foundation that no storm, no technology, no AI, no court, no probate court, no death can ever take away. So God bless you all. If you have any estate planning questions, please ask me in the comments below. I can't promise I'll answer all of them, but I'll do my best to make videos that's going to help you make your own trust or guide you to the right attorney. So God bless you all. Talk to you soon. Bye.